In the study of virology, there exists a concept known as latency. It is a state of reversibility. A pathogen enters the host, bypasses the initial immune defense, and then, paradoxically, ceases to attack. It does not replicate. It does not destroy cells. It simply waits. Current epidemiological data suggests that approximately 95% of the global adult population carries the Varicella Zoster virus. For the vast majority, this biological code sits dormant within the sensory nerve ganglia, specifically the dorsal root. It is a biological sleeper agent, acquired often in childhood, that remains completely undetectable by standard blood tests during its latent phase. The virus is not dead, it is effectively listening. It waits for a specific set of environmental variables to align, a drop in T-cell immunity, a spike in cortisol, or the introduction of a co-infection. When these gates open, the virus exits latency. It travels down the nerve fiber to the skin surface. This mechanism proves a fundamental, if uncomfortable, biological principle. The absence of symptoms is not the absence of threat. Health is not merely the current state of the body, but the capacity of the immune system to suppress what is already inside it. Today, we will analyze a high-profile case study of this mechanism failing. We will examine the 2022 medical collapse of Justin Bieber. This is not a story about celebrity burnout. It is a forensic examination of Ramsay Hunt Type 2 and how a biological debt accumulated over a decade was collected in a single week. To understand the collapse of 2022, we must first analyze the biological environment of the subject in the years prior. In 2019 and 2020, public perception of Justin Bieber shifted negatively. Media outlets and social commentary focused on his physical deterioration, specifically his complexion and apparent lethargy. The prevailing cultural narrative attributed these symptoms to substance abuse. However, forensic analysis of the subject's medical disclosures reveals a different physiological reality. In January 2020, Bieber confirmed via Instagram and later in the docuseries Seasons that he had been diagnosed with two concurrent conditions, Lyme disease and Epstein-Barr virus. Lyme disease, caused by the bacterium Borrelia burgdorferi, is an inflammatory powerhouse. According to a 2018 study published in Frontiers in Medicine, Lyme disease can evade the immune system and cause chronic suppression of natural killer cell function. Simultaneously, Epstein-Barr is a herpes virus that, like chickenpox, establishes latency. By 2021, the subject's immune system was engaged in a multi-front war. It was managing the bacterial load of Lyme disease and the viral load of Epstein-Barr. This biological expenditure requires immense metabolic energy. Yet, in this exact window of immunological fragility, the subject committed to one of the most physically demanding undertakings in the music industry, a global stadium tour. The Justice World Tour was scheduled to begin in February 2022. It comprised over 130 dates across 5 continents. For an athlete in peak condition, this schedule is grueling. For a host with a compromised immune system and multiple latent pathogens, the data suggests it was a statistical inevitability that a breaking point would be reached. We will now analyze the critical event window beginning in February 2022. The tour commenced as planned, with 40 sold-out shows performed between February and June. By this point, the subject's biological load was catastrophic. Acute viral reactivation combined with chronic Lyme management. In the first week of June 2022, the specific virus residing in Bieber's nervous system, Varicella Zoster Virus, woke up. This was not a random occurrence. Research in the Journal of Neurology, Neurosurgery, and Psychiatry indicates that VZV reactivation, specifically in the form of Ramsay Hunt Syndrome, occurs when T-cell-mediated immunity falls below a critical threshold. On June 7, 2022, Bieber announced the postponement of 3 shows, citing generic sickness. This was a significant financial event. Industry estimates place the gross revenue of a single stadium show between $2 million and $4 million. To cancel 3 implies an immediate loss of nearly $10 million in revenue and logistics. Then, on June 10, 2022, Bieber posted a video to Instagram that provided the definitive forensic evidence. In the footage, the right side of his face is visibly paralyzed. He cannot blink his right eye. He cannot smile on the right side. This is the hallmark presentation of Ramsay Hunt Syndrome Type 2. This is not Bell's palsy, which is idiopathic. This is Ramsay Hunt syndrome. It is caused specifically by the reactivation of the VZV virus within the geniculate ganglion of the facial nerve. As the virus replicates, it causes intense inflammation and compression of the nerve within the narrow bony canal of the skull. This compression leads to the paralysis seen in the video. The syndrome is characterized by a triad of symptoms: facial paralysis, ear pain, and vesicles in the auditory canal. The virus had been sitting dormant in Bieber's nervous system since childhood chickenpox. It waited decades for this specific moment of weakness, induced by the stress of the tour and the underlying Lyme disease, to strike. This event serves as a precise demonstration of the principle of viral latency. The virus did not attack Bieber because he was unlucky. It attacked because the biological conditions for suppression were removed. In virology, the immune system is constantly expending energy to keep latent viruses in check. This is known as immune surveillance. When the host introduces high levels of cortisol, or when the host is fighting another infection, the surveillance mechanism fails. A 2015 study in the Journal of Clinical Investigation demonstrated that chronic stress directly impairs the ability of T cells to control latent herpes viruses. The body has a finite amount of resources. When those resources are diverted to managing a 130-date world tour and a chronic bacterial infection, the jail guards watching the dormant VZV leave their post. Bieber's case highlights that the damage was not caused by the event itself, but by the pre-existing, dormant threat that was ignored. The virus was always there. The tour merely created the environment for it to emerge. To further validate this principle, let us examine a historical counter-evidence: post-polio syndrome. In the mid-20th century, thousands of individuals survived acute paralytic poliomyelitis. They recovered, often through intense physical therapy, and went on to live normal lives for 30 to 40 years. However, decades later, up to 40% of these survivors began to experience new muscle weakness and fatigue. This is not a reactivation of the virus itself, but a failure of the compensation mechanism. The neurons that survived the initial attack had been overworked for decades to compensate for the ones that died. Eventually, they failed. The contrast here is critical. In post-polio syndrome, the body pays the price for overexertion decades later. In Bieber's case, the price was paid immediately. Both scenarios prove the same biological law. The body keeps a ledger. You cannot borrow energy indefinitely. Whether it takes 30 years or 30 days, the debt of immune suppression and neural overuse will be collected.
The forensic evidence from the Bieber case and the historical data from polio survivors lead to a singular logical framework. we can conceptualize health not as a static state, but as a dynamic equilibrium between viral load and immune capital. When the denominator, stress plus load, exceeds the numerator, immune capital, latency breaks. The implications of this are straightforward. High-performance individuals often operate under the assumption that they can push through fatigue. The biological reality is that pushing through is simply borrowing from the immune system's surveillance budget. In a closed system, such as the human body, energy is finite. If energy is directed toward high output performance, it is necessarily diverted away from maintenance. The Bieber case demonstrates that even with unlimited financial resources and access to the best medical care in the world, one cannot bypass this fundamental biological constraint. Observing these patterns, one might consider the dormant variables in their own biology. Most adults carry the same virus that paralyzed Justin Bieber. Most carry the markers of past infections, injuries, or genetic predispositions. These are not active threats, but they are present. The data suggest that the breaking point, the moment of sudden illness, is rarely sudden. It is the cumulative result of a long period where the immune system was quietly managing a load it could no longer sustain. When we observe high-functioning individuals collapse, it is an invitation to audit our own biological ledger. Are we operating with a surplus of immune capital, or are we in a deficit, relying on latency to hold the line? Justin Bieber eventually resumed his tour, only to cancel it entirely months later to focus on health. The virus forced the decision that the logic could not. The lesson remains: the past is never truly gone, it is merely waiting for the right conditions to return.